Ask NASA. We'll be using that. We'll answer those questions throughout today's broadcast. We won't get as many today during this pre-launch, but we'll have plenty of time later on when we're in the docking and hatch opening shows, so be sure to keep on sending those in. Now, though, let's learn a little bit more about the Soyuz spacecraft itself, which measures in at 23.5 feet long, tipping the scales at 15,650 pounds. And the Soyuz itself, the spacecraft, is also comprised of 3 different modules. At the very top, you see the orbital. In the middle, the descent, where the crew actually is, and on the bottom, the propulsion module. The descent module is situated in the middle of the Soyuz vehicles. That has a customized seat liner inside each of the seats for these crew members that they're seated in during launch, entry, and landing, and contains all of the different controls and displays necessary for the flight. It has life support systems, batteries for re-entry and landing. Also, the parachutes are tucked away right behind the crew members' heads. It also has soft landing rocket engines on the very bottom beneath the heat shield that fire to slow the Soyuz right before it touches down in Kazakhstan. There's also 8 hydrogen peroxide thrusters located on the module that are used to control its orientation or its attitude during the actual descent until parachute deployment. It also has guidance, navigation, and control system to maneuver the vehicle during that descent phase of the mission. It weighs 6,393 pounds, has a habitable volume of about 141 cubic feet, so it's a bit of a tight fit. Just overhead and through a hatchway, though, is the orbital module at the very top. And this is the part that not only connects to the descent module via a pressurized hatch, but is the part that will actually connect to the International Space Station. It's got a small amount of room for the crew to move around during the flight to station. It was much more important space when they were taking 2 days, which is still the default if there are any issues during that initial trip. But it has about 230 cubic feet of space, has the docking mechanism, hatch, rendezvous antennas all at the very front end, and that docking mechanism, again, is what's actually used to connect this spacecraft to the International Space Station. And then the rendezvous antennas, which are on the very top, that are used by the automated docking system, which actually use radar, will maneuver it towards the station for docking. There's also a forward-looking window on the module for the crew to take manual measurements of distance. All the way on the bottom of the spacecraft is the propulsion module that has all of the oxygen storage tanks, the main engine, the attitude control thrusters, avionics, and communications and control equipment. Propulsion portion of the module handles all the orbital maneuvers, including those actually needed to rendezvous with the International Space Station, but also perform the deorbit burn at the very end of the spacecraft's mission. And before they're deployed, the 2 solar arrays, which gather electrical energy for the systems on board, are folded against the body of the spacecraft, and those will actually unfold right after we get into orbit. The propulsion module itself, though, detaches during that final descent and burns up in the Earth's atmosphere along with the orbital module, that descent module, so that middle part, which has the heat shield, the only piece of the Soyuz that actually survives that fiery re-entry. The entire spacecraft, not only serving as a crew transport vehicle, so getting the crew up into space and then getting them back home at the end, also serves as basically their escape capsule. So these are used in the event that they need to get off of the space station in a hurry for any reason. They use their Soyuz spacecraft as that emergency descent and landing. So there is always at least 1 Soyuz spacecraft for each of the 3 crew members on board, or rather there's at least a seat in a Soyuz at all times for any crew members on board the space station. We are 10 minutes and 42 seconds and counting down to launch. Representatives from NASA, Roscosmos, and the United Arab Emirates, along with friends, family, are all watching just a short distance away from the launch pad that we're getting a live look at right now over in Baikonur. For a quick update on all the activities there, why don't we go to Baikonur veteran and NASA Public Affairs Officer Rob Navius.
Dan, it is sunset here in the Central Asian desert, and the multinational crew strapped inside the Soyuz MS-15 spacecraft is set to begin its 6-hour journey to the International Space Station. Fall is in the air here in Baikonur with the start of this mission in the offing, as Skropochka, Mir, and Al-Mansouri are minutes away from blasting off in their Soyuz spacecraft in the final crewed launch of this year. After today's liftoff, the legendary Site 1, where Yuri Gagarin began his journey into the history books more than 58 years ago, will be temporarily closed for renovation and modernization to accommodate future human spaceflight launches of the Soyuz spacecraft on the upgraded 2.1A Soyuz booster. The NASA delegation for this launch is led by the acting administrator for human exploration, former astronaut Ken Bowersox. About 1,000 people from the United Arab Emirates are here to watch their native son, Al-Mansouri, ride into their history books as the first Emirati citizen to fly in space. Against that backdrop, as we near the 19th anniversary of the start of a permanent human occupancy of the International Space Station, everything is in readiness for a ride into the sunset skies from this historic venue. That's it from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. Now back to you at Mission Control in Houston.
And thank you, Rob. Getting some in-cabin views now of the Soyuz. In this view, in the bottom right corner, you're seeing the center seat. That's Oleg Skropochka. And then in the center of your screen, that is Hazza Ali Al-Mansouri. He's seated in the right seat for today's launch, making his first trip into space, the third for Skropochka. We're about 8.5 minutes away from the planned launch time. Why don't we sneak in a few more Ask NASA questions? Our first one comes from Zyriel, who wanted to know, when's the last time 9 people were aboard the International Space Station? Great question. It hasn't actually been that long. It was September of 2015 when there was a short taxi flight that brought up a Kazakh cosmonaut, and that was during the one-year mission for Scott Kelly and Mikhail Kornienko. So again, it was another really long duration flight, and we had a crew member going up for a short, we call it a taxi flight, just about an 8-day mission. Our next question comes from Good Hope, who wanted to know, is there a possibility their flight path will be affected by the HTV-8 launch that just happened yesterday? No, it won't. This is something, as you can imagine, all of the different flight controllers look at very carefully. There's usually some constraints around when vehicles are arriving, but these won't be arriving at the same time. This Soyuz going to launch and dock today. The HTV-8 not set to actually get really close to the space station until Saturday. And then we'll do one more, this one from Cassidy, who wants to know, what do they eat? Well, Cassidy, they eat quite a bit of different things. Each of the crew members, before they go up, at least on the NASA side, get a chance to sit down with NASA food scientists to map out all of their likes and dislikes for their menu items. It's much more diverse of a menu than you might imagine, getting everything from shrimp cocktail to different pork chops, things of that nature. Food in space, not as you might imagine. They don't have the freeze-dried ice cream. We actually are able to send real ice cream sometimes, and most of their food not coming in tubes. It's dehydrated, and so it actually has we call it a shelf-stable life, so it'll maintain taste and nutrition for up to 2 to 3 years. Right now, though, we are just under 6.5 minutes away from launch. We have teams here in Mission Control Houston standing by to monitor. They'll be much more involved once the vehicle actually approaches the space station. And then overseeing today's mission, Mission Control Moscow out in Koryov. They're going to be talking directly to the crew during their flight up to orbit. And on the right there, a continuing look at a live view of the Soyuz rocket on the launch pad. We are just 6 minutes away. At this point, all of the pre-launch operations are complete. And the countdown, the first and second stage engines are ready for launch. They've confirmed that they've gotten telemetry from the rocket, indicating that all the primary and backup systems are ready to support. And we just heard the call that the launch key has been inserted in the launch bunker. That's probably one of the coolest things about one of these launches, is they do use an actual key. And that transitions the launch sequence into its automatic mode. So we are T-minus 5 minutes, 15 seconds away from launch. And at this point, the range at Baikonur has been cleared. The Soyuz rocket ready to begin its journey.
Протяжка 1.
Ground measurement system is activated by Run 1 command.
Продувка.
Combustion chamber nitrogen purge.
We are T-minus 4 minutes 30 seconds at this point. Fuel lines, the combustion chamber being purged with nitrogen, so using a nitrogen gas to blow out any remaining vapors of fuel or oxidizer that may be in those fuel lines. At this point, the crew member have their helmets closed inside the cabin. They're strapped in and ready for launch.
Принимайте нас.
Sarmat, how do you read me?
Как нас слышно?
How do you read me? Loud and clear. Everything is fine on board. Copy.
You're hearing a translation between the commander, Oleg Skropochka, and the actual launch engineers there in Baikonur, reporting everything good on board, the crew ready to go.
Протяжка 2.
Ground measurement system is activated by Run 2 command.
Ключ на дренаж. Есть дренаж.
Oxidizer and fuel drain and safety valves of launch vehicle are closed.
And just passing the 3-minute mark now away from launch. All the cockpit displays inside the Soyuz are lit up and ready for cosmonaut Oleg Skropochka to keep an eye on during today's flight. All the onboard systems are switched over to onboard control, continuing to march down 2 minutes 40 seconds away from liftoff.
Repress.
And keep an eye on the videos. You'll see 2 large umbilical towers or arms kind of connected to the rocket still. The taller one is the first umbilical tower. That'll separate the booster and that'll initiate auto sequence start. That coming right at around T-minus 35 seconds. And when you see the smaller umbilical detach, that means we are 15 seconds away from launch. And T-minus 2 minutes from launch. One minute, 30 seconds away. It does look like we have some cloud cover there in Baikonur, so you may see it disappear into the cloud deck pretty quickly. That first stage going to light up the night sky, though. It's going to burn for the first several minutes before those 4 strap-on boosters break away at just about 1 minute and 58 seconds into the flight. One minute and counting.
1 minute to liftoff contact. Copy. Everything is fine on board. We're feeling well, and we're ready for launch. Copy. Vehicle to internal power.
And you see that first umbilical separating. And now keep an eye on the one a little bit lower down. Once that separates, you know we're 15 seconds away from liftoff.
Пуск. Бортовое питание.
Auto sequence initiated.
Auto sequence start. Second umbilical separating. T-minus 15 seconds. You can see the engine starting to fire.
Second umbilical.
The first stage ramping up.
Engine turbopumps at flight speed. Engines at maximum thrust.
And liftoff.
Liftoff.
Oleg Skropochka, Jeskamir Hazza Ali Al Mansuri leaping forth from Gagarin start on their way to the International Space Station.
50 секунд.
60 seconds in flight.
Двигатели первой второй ступени работают устойчиво.
First and second stage thrusters are operating just fine. Copy. Everything is fine on board the Soyuz. We're feeling great. Copy.
We're going to continue to get these translations throughout the flight. Everything's still sounding good with that first stage. You can see the 4 strap-on boosters lighting up the night sky. Soyuz delivering 930,000 pounds of thrust with that first stage, the 4 boosters and the single core engine. You can see them punching through the cloud layer there. The first stage measures 68 feet in length, 24 feet in diameter, burning liquid fuel for the first 2 minutes of the flight.
The flight, pitch, your roll are nominal.
So pitch, yaw, and roll, referring to the orientation of the vehicle. Nominal, a word you'll hear a lot. That just means everything is proceeding normally. Continuing to get good first stage indicators from the Soyuz. Things looking good inside the cabin. You can see Jessica Mir at the top of your screen. Oleg Skropochka at the bottom there in the commander's seat.
First and second stage thrusters are operating nominally.
A little over a minute and a half into the flight, everything continuing to go well with the Soyuz crew. They've already well exceeded over 1,100 miles an hour. The next things we're going to be looking for is the escape tower Jettison, and then the first stage strap-on boosters separating. And they're getting a great view. You can see that choreograph across the first stage. Strap-on boosters have separated along with that tower. Now the core engine continuing to fire. The Soyuz already at an altitude of about 28 statute miles.
Are not nominal. Copy. Everything is nominal on board. We are feeling great. Copy.
So at this point, the Soyuz traveling in excess of 3,300 miles per hour. You can see those 4 strap-on boosters continuing to descend. The Soyuz powered now by that core stage engine.
160 секунд.
160 seconds into the flight. Copy. Yes, we see that the launch route Jettison is also confirmed. Affirmative.
The launch shroud protecting the Soyuz during that initial climb through the atmosphere has been jettisoned. This is actually a view from on the Soyuz spacecraft itself. You're looking down at one of the folded up solar arrays. We're over 3 minutes now inside. The rocket's altitude already 48 miles in height. At this point, traveling in excess of 4,700 miles per hour.
200 секунд.
200 seconds into the flight.
Двигатель второй ступени работает нормально.
Second stage thrusters are operating nominally.
So everything continuing to go well with that core stage. The core stage booster of the Soyuz, 56 feet in length, 13.5 feet in diameter, has a single engine with 4 fuel chambers. And it provides between 178,000 and 220,000 pounds of thrust, depending on the altitude, for its 3 minutes and 28 seconds of operation. This is going to continue to burn until about 4 minutes 43 seconds into the flight. And Soyuz is going to use what's called a hot stage technique.
Copy all. Everything is nominal on board. We're feeling great. Copy.
Reports everyone doing well on board, everything continuing to go well. Again, that hot stage technique will actually see the third stage start to fire while the second stage is still connected. It has a lattice-like structure between the 2 stages, allowing the exhaust to escape, and that allows then the core stage to drop away, with the third stage already powering the Soyuz into its initial orbit.
Параметры конструкции ракетоносителя в норме.
The launch vehicle control system parameters are nominal. We are standing by for GK2. Second stage shutdown.
And standing by for that third stage ignition. And confirmation, second stage has shut down and separated. The Soyuz now being powered by that third stage engine.
Copy. GK2 command, cutoff command went through, and everything is nominal on board. Copy all.
Everything continuing to proceed smoothly. The core booster separating at an altitude of about 105 miles in height. It's about 170 kilometers. Now being propelled by the single engine of the third stage. It provides about 67,000 pounds of thrust and is going to burn for a little over 4 minutes. It will be the final phase of the rocket's journey into orbit.
Third stage thrusters are operating nominally.
And again, this is a view looking back towards the end, and that'll be cutting in and out this an animation of what's taking place right now. That third stage engine going to continue to fire and carry the vehicle into orbit. This is actually a view you're seeing one of the folded up solar arrays. That and along with a series of antennas will deploy shortly after the Soyuz makes its initial orbit. We're still about 2.5 minutes away from the shutdown and separation of the third stage. Everything continuing to go smoothly for this ride, taking off right on time at 8:57 a.m. Central Time. Everything looking good so far with the crew. Alex Kropochka, Jess Kamir, and Hazza Ali Al-Mansuri inside the spacecraft, well on their way to orbit.
400 seconds into the flight. The spacecraft is stable.
$450.
450 seconds into the flight. The flight is nominal.
And we're approaching 8 minutes since liftoff. At this point, the vehicle traveling at a velocity of over almost 13,500 miles an hour. We're just under a minute away from third stage shutdown and separation. We'll see the engine on the third stage cut off and separate, delivering the Soyuz spacecraft into its initial orbit.
490.
490 seconds.
Стабилизация изделия
The
устойчива.
spacecraft is stable. Copy all. Everything is nominal on board, and we are feeling great. Copy.
500 секунд.
500 seconds. Everything is nominal.
Есть ГК-3.
Look at 3 command. Got out.
And getting a spectacular view there. You see the third stage separate and fly away.
And Sarmat, congratulations. We're handing you over to Moscow. Sarmat, Moscow.
Moscow station, please ground.
Go ahead.
Go ahead and please ground.
Go ahead, Moscow. How
was
are you
the,
feeling? We are standing by
Excellent.
for
Was
your report
everything
on the
nominal?
third stage separation. Everything was
All the
nominal, and we are
appendages
feeling
have been
great, and are working from pages 35 through 39. Copy all, and we are standing by for the first measurement for page 36.
And just like that, 3 new crew members now in outer space, the third stage separating, and we did get a good report that all of the solar arrays and antennas have deployed. So a spacecraft in good health now in orbit around planet Earth. Russian cosmonaut Oleg Skoropochka, NASA astronaut Jessica Meir, and your United Arab Emirates astronaut Hazza Ali Al-Mansuri now in outer space and beginning their chase down of the International Space Station.
Принято.
Copy all.
РПВ закрыли?
It's closed.
РПВ-1, 2 закрыто.
RPV 1 and 2 flow sensors are closed. Copy all. That's wonderful.
And oversight of the spacecraft now going to be transferring over to the Russian Mission Control Center just outside of Moscow. It'll be this team right there in the room.
Есть ЛТВ.
And again, we did get confirmation that both solar arrays and all of the rendezvous and docking antennas have deployed. So a spacecraft in good health, along with the crew, now ready to make the 6-hour journey towards the space station.
Сарматы, получаем картинку.
Sarmats, we can see the image.
И ждем от вас первый замер.
And we're standing by for the first measurement per page 36 from you.